Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Korey Rowe. Last name is Rowe. He's publishing a book. He's published it. I think it's released on Amazon in a week or two. The timing is perfect. If you're watching this on YouTube, X, Rumble, Substack, places where I haven't been censored, you'll see the full title of the book is The Soldier That Left, The Untold Story of Loose Change. And the timing is amazing. It's 25-year anniversary of a very important event, I think, in his life and mine as well, which was 9/11, 2001, in everybody's life. I was just reading through this book and thinking where I was in September 11th, 2001. It was very memorable for me and still is. Like, I know where I was. I was sitting in the living room watching it. I could not believe what I was watching on TV. But this book, I read through it. I know some of these names. And I would say that this documentary, Loose Change, I'm going to go back and watch it again. I should have watched it before the show, but it was really the most important data point for me to change my opinion about 9/11. I believed the government line 100% for probably the 3 years up until Loose Change came out. I think it was late 2004, early 2005, at least the first edition. And I think it's a very important historical piece. And now, like 9/11 documentaries, it's its own industry. You could probably write a book about all the different 9/11 documentaries on a variety of different subjects, people, researchers. But this was really the first one. This is it. This is it. Is Loose Change, and it's well worth your time if you haven't seen it. If you're in my audience, I'd be surprised if you haven't seen it. But if you haven't, go check it out. Loose Change. And again, it's Korey Rowe. And I was reading through the intro of the book. It's incredible. We're talking the pre-show too. He was in basic training when 9/11, 2001 happened. And so he has an interesting personal involvement in the events of Loose Change and also what happened after 9/11, the wars in the Middle East that are still ongoing today. But he can talk more about that. So Korey Rowe, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Thank you. I really appreciate having me on.
Great. So people who may not be familiar with your name or Loose Change, maybe you can talk about your background, how you got involved. I know there's a lot of kind of personal information. It's kind of like a biography in this book. Maybe you can talk about your background, what led up to you signing up for the military, and then your involvement in the documentary Loose Change.
Absolutely. So, welcome, folks. My name is Korey Rowe. Thanks for listening in today. The story of Loose Change is very unique, and that's why I wrote the book. As a young man in America, when I was about 18 years old, I didn't have a lot of things going for me. I was in a poor area of upstate New York. I didn't have money for college. I wasn't in the right mindset, and I didn't feel like I would be successful. So on August 21st, 2001, I signed up to the United States military as an infantry soldier. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, where I was to conduct my basic training. And I was in holding for a few weeks, getting paperwork started, get my head shaved, those kind of things. And then 9/11 was supposed to be my first day and did end up being my first day of basic training. And so I thought it was a drill at first. I was like, is this how every first day starts? And it was very much not the case. 18 weeks later, I found myself on the first thing smoking to Kandahar, Afghanistan, where I was part of the initial invading force of Afghanistan. Served there for 7 months, built the line, was in Kandahar, Bagram, did a series of missions in the air assault unit of the 101st, and then came back to the United States, refit, retrained, and 7 months later went to Kuwait to invade Iraq in the initial tip of the spear of the invasion of Iraq. So I got a first front row seat to the two wars that the United States started post 9/11. And as William said, I also believed the story hook, line, and sinker. I was a soldier in basic training, so I didn't get any outside media. The only media I saw was the Armed Forces Network, and that was the case in Afghanistan and Iraq as well. And so I was, very much like, we got to do this. And then when we got into Iraq and I started to experience that, it was very clear to me that the intelligence that they had sold to the American public was not real. I was in a country with a lot of people living on mostly about $1 a day. There was no chemical weapons depots. There was no, weapons of mass destruction. There was no organized military of any kind. We rolled through the country in 3 weeks and won the war. And then it moved on to the peacekeeping operation, which just turned into a much, much longer, much more deadly war that lasted for a very, very long time and cost over 4,400 American lives. So Iraq, I really became disillusioned, as William stated, and I came back from Iraq not really knowing what was up and down, and I was probably less informed than most people because I had just not been exposed to media for such a long period of time. But something deep inside of me told me that it wasn't right. Coming near the end of my tour in the military, Dylan, my best friend, started working on a movie that he wanted to make called Loose Change. And I didn't have a lot going on in my life after the military. I didn't have a lot of plans. And so I wanted to help him with this movie he made. And so, we shot some scenes for it. It included some scenes of characters talking, and then it included cutaway scenes of information about 9/11. And it was the very early stages of what Loose Change was. And we worked on that project for a couple of years. And a story that I will tell: as I left the military, I joined Dylan to produce Loose Change. And right at that moment, we decided to change it into just a documentary, made the documentary cut, and put it out on the internet for free through torrent sites and things of that nature that were, internet 1.0 stuff. And it quickly took off, and we just got into it. And as a soldier coming back from the Middle East who served 2 tours as an infantry soldier on the front lines, I had a lot of things to talk about. And we started doing events and screenings, and people would come out and we would talk about it. And so this process went on for a very long time, 12 years of our life. We made subsequent versions of Loose Change over the years for many different reasons, always trying to put forth the best information that we could. And it was a hell of an experience. I went from the deserts of the Middle East to Hollywood and back, and got my ass kicked a little bit. And it was real life, man.
Right. So you really took off. Like you kind of, I remember a name from that time, Cindy Sheehan, who I've met actually. She was an anti-war thing. So you kind of networked with the anti-war left maybe, and went to California, and you were on Pacifica Radio. And so all this stuff kind of like would you say that once you guys released the film, the interest was immediate? Was that fair to say?
Absolutely. It was definitely, once we created Loose Change, it created a being, like a digital being, that we had no idea where it was going or how big it was going to get. And we just tried to keep the thing going, through lawsuits and attacks and disinformation and information campaigns. And so we did. We went all over the place. We toured for weeks. We went into months and years. We did as much press as we could. And it was always in the pursuit of getting a new investigation into 9/11, because the 9/11 Commission report is a whitewash of the events. No single American was held responsible for the attacks of 9/11. And we used 9/11 as a blank check to create the world that we're in today. And so, yes, when it first started, it was very much a leftist anti-war movement. And I mean, the motivation behind it was for Dylan to create a film because I was in the Middle East and he wanted to try to, get me home, or in some kind of,
Oh, interesting. So that was kind of like the genesis of it, was kind of like an anti-war film.
It was very much an anti-war film. And for me, as I said, like, I lost my squad leader, my good friend Troy Jenkins over there, jumped on top of a cluster bomb to save his squad and a little girl that dropped it at his feet. I had a lot of good people that died over there for no reason, based off of lies. And I want accountability for them. And I still, to this day, want accountability for them. And that's why partially I wrote the book. I've made documentaries about my veteran experience, my military experience, and my other veterans that I served with. Change. Right. I'm a proponent for investigation and accountability.
And you and Dylan were friends in high school, so you guys are friends even before the Loose Change. So that's not what brought you two together. I mean, it did, but you were friends before that. I think you were living on his couch surfing or something.
I was crashing with Dylan. Dylan and I met doing paper routes at 14. We hung out, and Dylan was really into computers. I was into girls, and so he taught me computers, and I taught him girls. It was a great back and forth. And he taught me coding, and he showed me how to edit video and stuff like that. And he was always kind of on the bleeding edge of technology. And that's really what Loose Change was when it came out. It was the trifecta of the perfect 3 things. You had personal computing experience, personal computers, laptops that were affordable, and people could edit and do things anywhere. You had nonlinear editing systems like Final Cut and Adobe Premiere. You had the growth of the internet. And then you had an event that was seared into the mind of every single person who was alive on that day. And you take those kind of different pieces together, and you get what became the first viral video of the internet. And that's what Vanity Fair called it, was the first internet blockbuster, because they didn't even know the word viral yet. And so it was kind of this experience of living through a digital being through the first viral video on the internet, and kind of just watching it take over.
It's incredible. In the way that it was, like, before you released your final version, it was going to be like a character actor driven film too, because that's not the one I saw. So you, like, the in his mind or your mind or Dylan's mind, it was people talking and relating. But what the one I saw was him narrating. Like, I think it was just a simple 90 minutes of just all of the
Yeah. So
incongruities.
what happened was we shot the scenes of us acting and doing these different things, and Dylan started to do screenings of the movie, and people told him two things very clearly. One, the acting's terrible. Drop it. Cut it all. We're not actors. We were kids messing around with cameras. And so we had fun and it wasn't really serious. But the documentary pieces that were in it were very valuable and the audience connected with that a lot. And so basically at these screenings, everybody told them the same thing. They're like, cut out all of the, cut out all the acting scenes and just stick with making a documentary. And so Dylan was not one to ignore good advice and was like, well, that's what everybody wants to see. Then I'll just make that. And so he called me and he's like, hey man, we're going to cut all the scenes and just make a documentary. And I was like, all right, cool, man. Like, I don't have any skin in the game. I mean, it was fun shooting the scenes, but if we don't use them, no big deal. And it turned out to be a very important decision.
Right. And then it just got clipped and really took off. Like, I just remember there were 5-minute clips here and there on certain subjects, and it was broken up in little pieces. But it is interesting. It really is kind of like the first, I don't know what you call it. Like, I don't want to call it like micro budget, but maybe a micro budget is fair, but like, it wasn't like a big budget documentary by any stretch of the imagination, right?
No, absolutely not. I mean, completely the opposite. It was made for about $2,000, and that was the cost of the laptop computer. I mean, everything else was stolen off the internet. It was other documentaries that we took clips from and other news reports. People had recorded things on VHS. I mean, you got to really think back to 2001. HD didn't even exist yet. We were still in 4:3. And so, you had this grainy footage and all this different stuff. And anything that we could get our hands on, it was always just kind of like a digital scavenger hunt to find, a new angle, a new person, a new interview that we haven't heard before, a new voice, a new name, and to try to follow those threads and to see where they led us. And they often led us to some amazing people who had incredible stories about that day. I'd like to highlight Barry Jennings, who worked in World Trade Center Building 7 and who was called into the Office of Emergency Management that morning. And he was inside World Trade Center Building 7 when an explosion went off. And he claims that he literally climbed over dead bodies trying to escape the building and was stuck in there for many hours before he was able to escape. And then a few hours later, the building collapsed into its own footprint as the third building that fell on 9/11. So, and again, but The Soldier That Left, the book, is not exactly about all of the conspiracy information and what's in Loose Change. It's not rehashing that again. You can go out and you can watch numerous versions of Loose Change that'll cover that. You can go to loosechange911.com. The most recent version that is in HD is on that website, and you can watch it for free. It's on our Vimeo channel. There are some scattered versions around on YouTube, but most of them have been taken down because of community standards. Just like you said at the beginning of the show, people that still let you get your message out there, and they claim that Loose Change was hate speech. And when I requested that they identify what exactly part of it was the hate speech, they refused to answer me and just deleted my channel. And so, it's been this lifelong journey of creating this movie and then trying to keep it alive through, wokeness and through community standards and watching the shift of conspiracy theories move from a left anti-war movement to a conservative right-wing conservative, mindset. And me just trying to, with Dylan, keep this film alive and to also tell people, what happened. And so The Soldier That Left is the story behind all that. Everybody knows Loose Change. You say Loose Change in a room, you're going to get a lot of people that raise their hands and say, yeah, I know what that is or what that was. A lot less people know Korey, Rowe, and Dylan Avery, the two guys who were behind it, and the decisions that we had to make to go through it. And I mean, just to give your listeners, something that they might not be aware of, is I was AWOL from the United States Army the entire time that I was producing Loose Change. And it was after my second tour into the Middle East that I came back to the United States, and they tried to illegally detain me past my terminal leave date and tried to send me back to Iraq for a third tour. And I gave them the middle finger and walked out the gate. And so for 6 years of my life, I had to live with a target on my back while trying to expose the government for lying about the wars in the Middle East. And it was a very precarious position to be in. And so that's what The Soldier That Left is about, is me, the soldier that left, and then going off to produce Loose Change. And so it takes you through everything, through our raw beginnings in a basement apartment in DC to Charlie Sheen's backyard in LA, and everything in between.
And Alex Jones, and then you hooked up with Burmis. So,
Yes.
and it's interesting, he's still around. Like, so this, not just the film, but like, it was the beginning of a new form of alternate media too. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would. I mean, Alex Jones was doing his stuff, and he was just a pirate radio host back then. He was pirating the airwaves. And I mean, he was a scrappy young guy. All of us were. And it was, it was just kind of the beginning of a new way to share information that has kind of now taken over. I mean, nowadays, a lot less people read newspapers, watch mainstream news. They're much more interested in reading independent sources and getting information for themselves and making their own decisions, as we should be, because that's the effect of Loose Change, is that you all of a sudden you just wake up and you're like, wait a minute, why did I simply believe everything I was told for as long as I did? And then let me stop acting that way. So it was a very important piece for a lot of people that helped them kind of shake loose, the mainstream version of things, and kind of get back to whatever reality they want to be in.
How did you guys decide on the title? How did you come up with Loose Change?
So Loose Change is a non-monetary representation of the term, meaning a loose change. And so that's what the film is it creates within somebody a change, and it's a loose one. It's like a hardcore thing. It's just like all of a sudden your mind changes a little bit. And so that's kind of what Loose Change always meant. People always thought it was money, but it has nothing to do with money.
Right. So that's it. And this is this really one of the early flyers? Because this says 4 years later. So this was is this 2005? Does that look right?
Yeah, that looks like something Burmis made. So Jason Burmis was a graphic designer at the local college in our hometown, and we were coming back from DC, and we met up with Burmis, and he jumped onto the team because he was just so knowledgeable. He's still out there on YouTube doing his channel. I'm sure you can find him. He's done a bunch of documentaries and stuff like that, and a lot of media to cover, exposing the truth. And so he made this poster for us, and then we went and did these screenings. And again, back in the day, Internet 1.0, people still met in public at public places. And so we would post those posters around New York City, and ride the subway and post some places, and then people would actually come out to the screenings. And it was really a fun experience. We went all over the country and world to just get our message out there. And so it was really cool. And I just want to say, hey, to Dan in the chat, hello to you as well.
Yeah. This is your producer credit. So written and directed, Dylan Avery, produced by, and Dylan Gate wrote the foreword to this book too. So you're still friends. Like, this is like, you guys have been friends for at least 3 decades or so.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we actually own a company together still to this day. We own Otsego Media, which is our media company, and we make narrative films now. Actually, we make horror films. Cool. That's what we once a year we get the band together and we make a horror film. Last year we put out Popeye. It was in theaters. It was Popeye the Slayer Man. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to shoot those kind of movies. We do a micro budget, small stuff. We're not talking $1 million budgets or anything like that. And we have fun with our friends, and we make these silly movies, and we put them out once a year. And then we do marketing and other video related stuff for the city that we live in. And we make, product videos and anything with a camera, basically. We're always rocking. And so it's nice. We get to kind of do what we want. I want to take a few months off and write a book. I want to go make a movie. I want to work for a few months. We get to do basically what we need to do.
What was the process for you leading up to you going AWOL? That's a very difficult decision. Can you talk?
Sure. Yeah. So coming back from Iraq, again, very just like disillusioned. I just didn't know what was up and what was down. I knew that I definitely didn't want to go back to war. I had seen more bodies and blood than I really wanted to. And I had a year left on my contract. And so I steeled myself to just get ready to do it and go through the last year. So the last year I did everything I was told. I did all the trainings. I did everything I was supposed to do. And right at the end, right in the end of your military career, you're supposed to go through a process called ACAPing. And what that means is that you learn how to make a resume, you learn how to do interviews, you turn in your gear, and it's a slowdown at the end of a military experience to transition into civilian life. And my commanders thought it was funny to keep me away from ACAPing because they knew how much I wanted to do it. And so it was kind of two things that led up to it, was that my commanders kept me away from ACAPing because they knew I wanted to get out and because they could. And so I had to follow their orders. So I did silly things like went to air assault school after I had done dozens of real world missions on helicopters in the Middle East because my platoon sergeant ordered me to do so. And so then when it came to my last day in the military, and when I was supposed to get out, the military was about to install what's called a stop loss. And so about 10 days after my ETS date, because they didn't have enough retention, because they didn't have enough enlistment, the military was basically not going to let people out, and they were going to force them to extend their contracts for years at a time and send them back to the Middle East because they didn't have the boots on the ground that they needed. And so I was at a fork in the road. I had two choices in front of me. Choice A, roll over, let the military take control of my life for what could be another 2 years beyond my contract date illegally, because my time to get out was before that stop loss. Or I could not, and I could go off into the unknown future and fight it and hope that it all works out one day. And so that was the choice that I was presented, and I made the choice to not get rolled over. They say, you got to stand for something or die for anything, or however it goes. So I made the very hard decision that I wasn't going to take it. I was going to stand up for what I believed in. I believed that the wars in the Middle East were immoral. And so I took that moment and I went and decided to join my best friend and produce Loose Change. And that's the reality of the situation. I was arrested multiple times over 6 years. And then 6 years later, I went back to the military, stood in front of my then new commander, and he remembered me. And he actually remembered what happened. And he let me go and gave me my honorable discharge because he knew how badly I had been screwed over. And so it was 6 years of my life that I'll never get back, that I traveled around with my brother's ID in my pocket in case I ended up having to talk to a cop and present ID, and the whole time producing the most popular 9/11 conspiracy film that was on the internet. So it was
all time. It has to be all time.
It is. It's definitely.
The who's arresting you? Just regular police would find out you were AWOL and arrest you, or how would you? That was it.
Yeah. So like, what happened one time was Dylan was out shooting footage, and he was using my car, and he was filming NEADS, the North American Aerospace Defense something. And he was just outside the base, just getting some B-roll of the base because we had some VO that referenced NEAD. So he just got a shot of the base. And their security cameras trained on him with a camera outside the base, got the license plates, ran the license plates. My name came up with a warrant. They sent the local sheriffs to my house and they arrested me. And so then I was put in the paper, and I was labeled a deserter, as rightfully so. And then I had to go back to the military and try to fight my case. And at multiple times I went back, and they tried to just send me back over to Iraq again. And so I just simply left again. And so I actually ended up going AWOL a total of 3 times over 6 years.
And this wasn't uncommon. I remember those stop loss orders. Like, I've never been in the military, but I remember people getting drawn back into the military during that time. Like, what the heck is going on? And yeah, there was a lot of that. I guess it's like the Vietnam War all over again, where people were protesting
in its own way. I mean, and they did it periodically. First, there was a stop loss, which means basically you're not allowed to go from one base to another. And then there was a stop loss, which stops people from even exiting the military. And then there was recalls, where they were recalling, National Guardsmen and stuff like that to active duty. And basically, because again, they didn't have enough people. After 9/11, there was a surge of enlistment because of 9/11, but that quickly diminished. And then once we retrained and retransitioned our focus from Afghanistan to Iraq, a lot of people smelled a skunk and were like, wait, something's not right here. And the enlistment stopped. And then from the inside, people who were serving in the military, like myself, was like, yo, this is not right. I don't want to be part of this. I want to get out of here as fast as I can. And so when our enlistment contracts ended, nobody re-enlisted. And so it was a time in the military that was very hard, because there was a lot of just a lot of angst, a lot of anxiety because of the wars in the Middle East. A lot of people on two sides of the coin.
PTSD, right?
Oh
PTSD and a
yeah,
lot of addiction issues too, right? Like almost
absolutely.
everybody came back with like a drinking problem. I don't know, didn't like
It's definitely
something
true.
there.
Well, the I can one of the things I believe is we were given a medication while we were in the Middle East called mefloquine. Mefloquine is now a black box by the FDA because of its known terrible side effects that actually mimic PTSD. And I believe that there's a correlation between the soldiers who served in the Middle East who were forced to take mefloquine and the high suicide rates that we're facing today. And I believe after 2011, when they black box that medication, you're going to start to see those tours, those men who served in those tours will have less PTSD related effects than the ones who were in the initial deployments because that medication was just so whack. We had to take it every Wednesday night. It was like, and everybody would have these crazy dreams. And all of the side effects of the medication include, PTSD related symptoms of anxiety, nightmares, just general uncomfortableness in social situations. It rewires your brain a little bit. And myself, not getting away from any of that. I went through drug problems and arrests and all kinds of different stuff, trying to get back to where I am today. It was a very challenging period of my life.
The argument for taking methylquine was that it was an anti-parasitic too, right? Isn't that why it
Yeah,
was
it was an
supposed to be
anti-malaria
anti-malaria? That's what it was.
yeah, anti-malaria pill, and that
Like,
they
why
claimed
not?
that there's malaria, and again, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. They give us smallpox vaccines, and everybody had these like festering wounds on their arms for like 6 months, and all kinds of different stuff that they gave the soldiers back then. As on top of the fact that they gave us unpotable water, right? We were the first ones in, so there was nothing there. Like, and when we deployed to Afghanistan, we didn't even have proper camouflage. We still had like a mixture of Vietnam woodland and Desert Storm camo mixed together. And that was the camouflage. No armored Humvees, no nothing. They just were like, just get on the plane and go with what you have and make it work. And so that was what Afghanistan was. Then we came back and they're like, all right, we're going to do. And I got to point this out too. When I went to Afghanistan, when we invaded Kandahar, there was 7,500 soldiers from all bases, all branches in Afghanistan. When we invaded Iraq, it was 120,000 soldiers. So Afghanistan was never the play. It was always about Iraq. It was always about making that. It was the main show, and it was crazy how much money they spent, how the CIA was able to drive around with Lexuses, and if it popped a tire, they'd burn it to the ground. I mean, it was a really crazy period. It was a really crazy period to live through, and that's why I wrote the book, was because now that it's been 25 years since 9/11, everybody remembers where they were on that day, just like you said at the head of the show. But the 10 years that happened after 9/11 was an incredible decade in American history. I mean, with the growth of technology, social media, the internet, things like Amazon and Netflix and the internet 2.0 world, into cryptocurrency and everything that exploded within that. It's really interesting to look back at that period now that's already almost 20 years behind us, and say, wow, what a very different world we live in.
We sure do. It's a very different. You guys rolled through Afghanistan really fast. I'm trying to remember, like after 9/11, it seems like you were there almost right away, and then I just remember like people falling and the whole the whole country being captured within like a month. Is that right? Is
Yeah,
my
I mean, well,
memory? Yeah.
there's no real resistance in Afghanistan. There's no real centralized government. There's no central military or anything of that kind. You have tribes that control different sections of the country, and so it wasn't difficult. It wasn't difficult to roll through there. But again, we're seeing it now in Iran. We've won the war in Iran like 90 times, right? But we're still at war with Iran. So like, it's just bullshit that the United States government puts out to the American people to try to quell their angst.
I know it is incredible that it's still on. The same stuff just happened again, like this year. Like, oh my God, we're right back there. Weapons of mass destruction. Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb, right? That was the whole thing that Saddam Hussein was going to have.
Yep.
When your book, you kind of liken to, I was thinking when you're in like basic training, I was thinking of the movie Full Metal Jacket. You also said that there was this kind of low Lord of the Flies ethos. Does that still stick with you? Do you still have that view of going through the military as Very,
Very much so. I mean, when you look at the structure of how militaries are operated, I joined at 18. And so I was being commanded by boys who were 23 and 24 years old, who were sergeants and staff sergeants. And they were, they were the leaders in the military. And it's all just a bunch of young men who are working together. There's not a lot like I wish I joined the military now as a grown man, because I would have been much more successful. I would have understand what was happening more. I would have been more operationally successful. As 18, I was completely just still like wet behind the ears, had no idea what was going on. And so you're just being directed by all these different people. And again, the fact that I wanted to get out was the reason that they didn't let me out. And so it was this like sick, pervasive mindset to just fuck everybody, excuse me, as much as you can, and just get your own. And it's a terrible place in my opinion. Like the military society is a completely different society than all of America. It is completely separate. They don't pay taxes. They operate under their own authority. They're directed by the president and the larger government as a whole, but they still largely do what they want to do. It's a very, very different society. And if you've never lived in the military, you really can't understand it until you're in it, or you're like the child of a dependent of somebody that is in the military, because it is a very, very strange world where you have to do what they say all the time. And it's like, even when you take a vacation, you take 2 weeks off, you get 30 days of leave a year. And so you take 2 weeks off and you're like, all right, I got 2 weeks. And you're just looking at your watch the whole time going, hey, I got to go back, and I got to do the thing that they say they were going to do. And it took me until I was 30 years old before I was a free man, able to make my own decisions and do what I wanted to do, because I was under some thumb of the United States government who controlled my life. And it's not a good way to live your life. There's
like 12 years,
definitely benefits to it. I don't want to say that there's a lot of positivity that can come out of a military lifestyle. I have benefits now that has assisted me in my life. I dutifully earned. So you got to be a particular individual, in my opinion, who wants to join the military and live that kind of lifestyle.
Well, the past is present, because the same kind of thing is happening in this whole Iran escapade, where people are complaining, jumping off boats, and horrible things are happening. Rise to Liberty has a question for you. He says, did you ever experience any of the burn barrels or the toxic environmental impacts of war? Do you have any answer to that, Korey?
Yeah, so definitely. So absolutely. So because we were the first units into both Afghanistan and Iraq, there was no toilets, there was no porta potties. And so we just dug holes and pooped in holes and then burned the poop with jet fuel. And that was literally what we did every day. And I got in trouble a couple of times for dumb shit. I don't remember what it was, but I remember working and burning the shit when just dumping gas on human feces and just with these long fence poles, just mixing it up as it was just like this terrible smoke just coming out of it. It was horrible. And so I have a lot of buddies that have a lot of problems from working those burn pits over there who breathe in all that terrible shit. And I mean, there was other stuff that we did beyond that as well. Like, once we were in the rebuilding phase of Afghanistan or Iraq, I mean, pick your poison, we helped the locals take down these buildings that were filled with asbestos. And so we had no gear whatsoever. And I was a private. So they're like, Private Rowe, go guard those Afghanis while they take apart that building. And I'm like, all right. And so I go over there and I hold my rifle and I'm standing there and they're taking the building apart. And all of a sudden it's just all this shit floating through there. And someone's like, yo, is that asbestos? And sure enough, it's asbestos. And so, we got all kinds of problems. And so you got burn pits, you got asbestos, you got the rounds, what are the particular ammunition that has radiation and stuff like that people have to deal with. So, and I mean, not to mention on top of that, look at even the gear that was issued to the military during this time. Like they were given the ACU, the combat uniform with the digital fatigue, which actually made you more visible than if had you just been wearing regular clothes, because it made you stand out as like a blotch of color. And so like they weren't prepared, that nobody was prepared. The equipment wasn't prepared. The intelligence was lies. It was a complete farce from beginning to end, scams top to bottom. Thousands of Americans died. Hundreds of thousands of innocent people died in the Middle East, destabilized an entire region for generations. And nobody is held accountable in the American government. And so that's where I've gotten to as, I'm just done. I don't believe in the American government at all. I live in America and I live by the rules because this is where I am. I have a family, I have businesses, and this is where I was born and raised. But I have no involvement with the United States government. I pay attention to no news. I watch nothing that comes out. There's nothing that they do that affects my life on a daily basis. And I want nothing to do with them because they are liars and scammers, all top to bottom.
The scam element was very prevalent in Iraq with like Halliburton and stuff, overcharging and shipping. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, once Iraq began to be established, multiple different military contracts were awarded to massive military contractors, as you said. Halliburton, KBR, and though they built like the mess halls, and they provided toilets, and they did laundry, and it was a complete scam, top to bottom. I keep saying this, but that's exactly what it was. They charged $125 per bag of laundry per soldier every time you washed your laundry, and the laundry came back dirtier than when you sent it in, because they just had these like trailers that they would pull up, and it was like one giant washing machine on the back of an 18-wheeler, and they just threw all these mesh bags in one giant thing, and they called it cleaning, and they gave you back your clothes, and it was and they charged the American taxpayer $125 a bag. And I mean, they charged like $19,000 per toilet seat. And it was just like, it was what it was a legal way to rip off the American taxpayer through wars in the Middle East. And if you look at $2 trillion broken up over 230 million Americans, is somewhere around $7,000 an American that we each paid to kill 4,400 and change of our own civilians in a war based on lies. And nobody's been held accountable. So I have a lot of problems with all of that.
Do you feel a certain kind of like a camaraderie with fellow Iraqi veterans, but also the sensibilities? Do you feel like it's all pretty much the same too? Like your view of the Iraq War, you and your group of people. How many people filtered through how many military people filtered through Iraq, do you think? Do you know offhand?
Oh, it was hundreds of thousands of people that filtered through Iraq over what was it, 15 years that we were there, or something like that. And I mean, international soldiers and, National Guardsmen who were activated and pulled over there, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, trillions of dollars spent, thousands of people. It was a gross use of human energy. And,
Yeah,
and I mean, as far as the other veterans, you have a lot of people who definitely were just like, experienced the same thing that I experienced. You have some people that were very patriotic and believed in everything that they were doing, and they would never say anything otherwise. And I respect them. And of course, they served and they did what they did, and they believe what they believe. Then you have the other side of the coin. You have people like me who saw the writing on the wall, who saw the lies and the poison and the deaths, and were like, "Yo, I'm not doing this anymore." And it turned me nonviolent. Like I haven't raised my fists in anger since I joined the military, and I will never do it again, because I just have seen the extent of human suffering, of what war does. And it changes you. I mean, there's no way to go through that and not be changed.
yeah, you're lucky to come out relatively unscathed, because there's some people around here, California, who are still like they're ex-Vietnam people, like they're just a mess.
I got to be honest, I didn't. I mean, I went through the darkest years of my life, which is what this book is about. I got into heroin. I was a heroin addict for about 3 years. And I tried to kill myself multiple times through use of drugs, because I just wanted to end it all. And it was just my wife who saved my life, and I actually got put in jail for a year. And it was those two factors that actually sobered me up enough to be like, hey, man, like, you should pull your shit together. And I got out of jail at 30. And that was the first time in my entire life that I was a free human being, able to make my own decisions and go where I wanted to go. And I was very successful.
Good for you. Yeah, and sometimes getting locked up is sometimes the best thing for people, strangely, is because it
It
gets them
was for
away
me.
from.
It
Yeah.
was for me, man. I was on a crash course. I was on my way to the grave. And it was my probation officer and I've told him so, that legitimately saved my life.
Yeah, good for you, man. I'm glad you made it, because a lot of people committed suicide or were engaged in other violent acts. They kept violent after they got back from Iraq, angry, and shot people. Like it's
I made
really
a documentary about it. If you want to watch it, it's free on Amazon. It's called Mile Marker.
mile marker.
It's a 90-minute documentary about me and my battle buddies, and specifically my battle buddy Jesse Snyder, who did die when he came home from PTSD related symptoms. He was found on the side of the road dead. There's a whole story behind it, and you can watch that free. It's me traveling across the country and just checking in with my battle buddies 15 years after the wars in the Middle East. So I made it about a decade ago. It was a really great experience.
Mile marker. I'll try to find that and put a link in the show notes. Do you have any idea of how many people watched Loose Change? It's in the hundreds of millions, isn't it?
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of people, for sure. I mean, back before YouTube was Google Video, and that was like the first video sharing site on the internet. And Loose Change was in the top 18 slots for almost an entire year. And there was the only thing that even got close to getting in those top 10 was Stephen Colbert's the press comedy show that he did. And it was just this thing that happened, and he made fun of Bush, and it was it was all the way up there, but it only made it to number 2. It didn't dethrone Loose Change, and then it quickly went away again. And each one of those, because what people did is they would watch Loose Change on Google Video, they'd download the video, they'd redub it in their language, and so it was in 18 slots as 18 different languages, from Spanish, German, English, Japanese, Mandarin, of course, Arabic, and every other language that you can imagine. And so for years, it was just up on the internet for free. And then there was the DVDs, and then the TV versions, and all kinds of stuff. So it was hundreds and hundreds of millions of views.
It's just incredible. I had to have watched one of those early iterations like 5 times. It just was so good. It was so mean. Like, you guys had it down. Here's a fellow vet from Ramadi.
I see that, man.
KBR foreign national workers committed suicide. Fellow vet here, Ramadi. 05 3rd ID.
Yeah. Respect, man.
And Jason Burmas off Loose Change. I remember him. Control the money, control the world.
It is the most abundant resource on the planet. I like to say that all the time. Is what is the most abundant resource on the planet? It's money. It's because we can just print more of it. You can't make more air. You can't make more land. You can't make more water. We can just keep making more money, and people can just keep hoarding it. And it is a terrible, terrible thing.
Sadly, I think that's what all these wars are about, are just huge wealth transfer and scams and kickbacks, and everybody's getting paid, just gorging on money. It's like
the government contracts are out of control. I mean, in every direction. And I mean, I'm a government contractor. I know they're out of control. So that's why my media company is signed up as a government contractor, because I'm a service disabled veteran owned business. And so we make 6% set aside in state contracts, and the state contracts that are put out are insane. Like, they're just these ridiculous amounts of money to do things, and it's like, why are we wasting so much money? But again, I just try to stay out of it because I just can't handle it.
It's like war pigs, like greed, and just like what's really scary about the human condition or humanity. There's a certain proportion of us who will let other people suffer and die and make money and live in their clubs and play golf and have a pool and all these nice things. They're just willing to do that, and it's just really it's disgusting, because those are the Dick Cheney types.
It was the Dick Cheney. I mean, Dick Cheney and Halliburton, he was on their board. I mean, he directed government contracts to the companies that he made. He directly profited from the wars in the Middle East and the disinformation that was presented. Nowadays, looking back, that level of corruption pales in comparison to what we have to deal with on a daily basis now. But it was the beginning stages of it. And so, I mean, let's look at that. You have Dick Cheney level of corruption down here. You got Donald Trump level of corruption up here. Where are we going to be in another 20 years?
It's a fantastic question. Like, it's only getting worse. Like, I voted for Trump to have no more wars in the Middle East, and then started again. And then you throw in Kirk death and Epstein stuff. It's just so bleak, man. Anyway, thanks a lot for sharing. Congrats on the book. People check it out. We're close to the 25-year anniversary. I should probably do another show on Loose Change, just to kind of memorialize it. There may be some kids out there who are young or in their teens who may not know how important of a film that was, but it's really one of the incredible underground or micro. I don't know a better word, but just like nuts and bolts documentary that had just such an incredible influence. Like, wow. And on me,
baby.
Yeah, it was grassroots. I like that better. But like, there's a couple like other people in here, like Loose Change changed my mind. Here's one. I always said the Twin Towers were built for the sole purpose one day knocking them down in a grotesque grand display of power. Well, there's an argument to be made for that. They are strangely the way they're strange. Tara says Loose Change was really good. Watched it years ago. Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything I missed, Corey, before we wrap it up? We're at the 45-minute mark.
No, man, I just super appreciate you having me on. I appreciate your listeners checking out the show. If you have a moment and you can spare it, I'd love it if you picked up a copy of the book. If you read the book, at the end of the book is my contact information. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to send me an email, that's the best way to communicate with me. And I appreciate your support. I appreciate your support in Loose Change. And I appreciate you supporting independent research and finding your own conclusions and not just swallowing what is put across in the Fox and CNN news every day. So stay savvy, stay awake, stay at it.
Yeah, amen. It's amazing though. Like the movie came out before YouTube, I think, was a company. YouTube, I think, was formed in 2008.
Yeah, YouTube didn't. Yeah, YouTube was not around when Loose Change came out. We had to make a new version in HD when it went on to Netflix because they were like, we're not going to put a standard definition version out there. So it was a process.
Do you know how many versions? Do you recall offhand how many versions you made? Not just that have been
read. There's five. There's five main versions. Okay. You have Loose Change, the original version. You have Loose Change second edition, which is everybody's favorite, and then Loose Change Final Cut, which is the one we did with Alex Jones that was a mess. Then we did Loose Change 9/11 American Coup for Netflix, and then we did Loose Change 9/11 as the final definitive version for Journeyman Pictures TV cut. And again, everyone's favorite is second edition. It's my favorite. It's everyone's favorite. And that's because as we made new versions, we tried to be more and more legitimate. And we tried to get a theatrical distribution with Mark Cuban and 2929 Pictures. And so we brought in David Ray Griffin, and we did everything we could to make it as scholarly and as legitimate as possible. And of course, that makes it a lot less fun. And so, it wasn't as exciting as the second edition and stuff like that. So again, if you want to watch the film for free, you can see the 60-minute version on loosechange911.com. And if you want to pick up a copy of the book, The Soldier of the Left, it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the things. There'll be an audio version for people who like audiobooks on Audible and Apple, iBooks or whatever that is. And I appreciate your support. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Tell me the name. So Mile Markers, your other documentary about Iraqi vets. And then you have your company, too. Tell me about, make it the movie.
Sure. If you want to check out some of the fun stuff that we've made, Otsego Media is our production company that we operate now. The first narrative movie we ever made is called Asteroid, just Asteroid. Again, you can find that on Amazon and everywhere, Tubi and Fandango and all those different things. And of course, it's about a government conspiracy. And it's a dark comedy and a love letter to our hometown. We had a lot of fun making it. We were poor filmmakers, but we did it. And then you can watch Popeye 1. I'm really proud of that. Popeye the Slayer Man is a horror film that we shot right here in Oneonta, New York a couple of years ago, made it out in theaters. And actually right now, before the show, I was editing Popeye 2 because I was the cinematographer, director of photography, and editor on that project as well. And then a couple other ones is a Ouija Witch, Bring 'Em Back Dead, and Zombie Apache.
Nice. I do have some horror aficionados in my audience, so maybe you'll get some people to go check that out in addition to checking out Loose Change. But thanks so much for your time. Thanks for the book. Timing is perfect. 25-year anniversary, not too far, less than a month off, guys. And the full title of the book for the audio listeners is The Soldier That Left, The Untold Story of Loose Change, and it's Korey Rowe, R-O-W-E. His contact information is in the back of the book. You can reach out to him there. Also put links to some of the other Loose Change stuff. Thanks so much for your time, Korey. Appreciate it.
Thanks, William. You have a great day. Thanks for having me on.
You as well. Thank you. Stay there. Stay there.